When I saw that there had been a debate between Steve Shives, a feminist here on YouTube, and Queenie, a non-feminist, I didn't think I would end up commenting on it just because there's a lot of material to sort through, and it can be hard to come by concrete points in this video format. But, very early in the debate, Steve said something that honestly left me stunned. Now, I will say that I may not have the proper intellectual context in which to critique Steve's ideas, simply because I haven't kept up with his channel, much like all these book recommendations that people have given me but I have not picked up. But with that in mind, here's what left me stunned.
The thing is, most of my my objections to what anti-feminists say are rooted in premises that they don't accept. And it's hard to argue with someone when you can't even agree on a starting ground.
Okay, so most of your arguments in support of feminism are rooted in premises that anti-feminists don't accept. Isn't that just another way of saying that your arguments in support of feminism are rooted in feminism? I'm sorry, but I've heard this same kind of reasoning from fundamentalist Christians. Most of my arguments against what atheists say are rooted in premises that they don't accept.
I know that doesn't make sense to you yet. It's not even supposed to. The Bible tells us that the natural man cannot receive the things of the Spirit of God. And it says that spiritual things are foolishness to you because they are spiritually discerned. It also tells us that the gospel is hid to those that are lost.
Eric, Steve, take all your arguments and roll them down a hill, because guess what? They're circular.
You know, like a lot of the arguments that anti-feminists make, they're not arguing about, well, what's the best technique, what's the best approach, what's the best strategy, which are the kind of arguments that feminists have with each other. You know, feminists argue with each other all the time, and they say, well, this issue is more important than this, or this issue is more important than that, and here's how we should go about addressing it, and here's what works, and here's what we should do and what we shouldn't do. And feminists argue about that kind of stuff with each other all the time, but they all have a basic agreement on some fundamental principles. Right. And when you argue with an anti-feminist, someone who is not just saying, well, this particular school of feminism is unproductive, but the entire feminist thing is, completely off, it's difficult to have a productive argument.
We Christians debate among ourselves all the time about how we can better understand God and what are the best ways to carry out His will, and we argue about that stuff all the time. But we all have a basic agreement that God exists and that He loves us and all that stuff. But when you argue with an atheist, someone who is not just saying, well, this particular sect of Christianity is unproductive, but the entire religion is completely off, it's difficult to have a productive argument. No, it's not difficult to have a productive argument. You just have to be prepared to defend the more fundamental aspects of your position, rather than the trivial details that you're used to debating among your close peers.
It's difficult to have a productive argument because if many of the prominent anti-feminists that I run across on YouTube don't even acknowledge that gender inequality is really a problem.
Most of my arguments against what atheists say are rooted in premises that they don't accept. Well, in that case, what you have to do is give those people some evidence that the supernatural is real, or that gender inequality is a problem in these areas. You don't just throw up your hands and declare that it's hopeless. And imagine if atheists approach discussions with religious people in the same way that Steve claims to approach discussions with anti-feminists. Christians don't even accept that God doesn't exist, so what's the point arguing with them? I'm sorry, Steve, but this is not the approach of a skeptic or a critical thinker. Now, to be fair to Steve, let's look at two potentially mitigating factors. Number one is he is having this discussion with Queenie, a non-feminist, so it does appear that he is willing to engage these people, at least non-feminists, on some level. And number two is the fact that he actually mentions why he is not willing to debate Sargon of Akkad and Teal Deer toward the end of this debate, and he says essentially that it's because he thinks they won't approach the arguments in good faith. That may have been what he was trying to say in the clips that I showed you earlier, but it doesn't really quite seem that that's what he was in fact saying.